Hi guys, it's Vesna here. Thank you so much for watching Vesna TV. For today's video, I am showing you 9 different spring themed DIYs that can be used either for a tray or just decor on their own. So I start off with this piece of scrap wood that my husband got from his work, and I cut it into house shapes, 3 different sizes. Now I've seen these like wooden house shapes at the Dollar Tree, like these little signs. I've seen them online, but I could not find them in person, so I decided to make my own. And I painted them in the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint. I did 2 coats of the paint just so I could get a nice coverage of these houses. I may use the other side of the houses for a different season. I haven't decided, but for now, this will be for spring, and it will carry on to summer because of the way I'm going to decorate them. After applying another coat, I go ahead and I distress them by using some black acrylic paint just from the Dollar Tree, and I dry brush on some of the black. So dry brushing is when you dab a little bit of black paint and then you dab it off on a paper towel or something, just so you just get a little bit of paint on your brush, not too much. And I always like doing this because it's so easy. If you put too much on, you can always take some off, so never worry about doing too much. I don't really have kind of like a set method. The way I do this is I look at it. If it needs more, I add a little bit more. If it needs less, then I just go over top of it with the base paint. So in this case, it would be the white. Once that is done, I go ahead and I wrap the houses into different colors of twine, and I'm using just brown twine and green twine. And again, all I do is just start it on one end, hot glue it to the side, and then wrap it around. So I apologize for the cat. As I am doing this video, he's basically screaming, is like whatever the meowing is, and it's just for attention. He's trying to get me to pet him, but he's actually not coming to me, so I apologize for all the noise. So anyway, I hot glue them, glue the sides down, and I wrap the brown twine several times, and I wrap the green twine several times just to get kind of an X effect with both colors. So if you haven't been to my channel, again, my name is Vesna, and this is my DIY channel where I do all sorts of DIYs on a budget. They're home decor DIYs, and they're Dollar Tree, thrift flips, trash treasures, anything that basically I can create beautifully and on a budget, I do it. I really like the rustic farmhouse style, so that's usually what I lean towards, but I do have some different styles on there too. If that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, leave me a comment just saying hi that you subscribed, and hit that notification bell so you can see when I post new videos. So once I finish with the twine rope, then I go ahead and I write in some words on these houses. Now I was going to use my Cricut and just apply the vinyl to the pieces, but then I thought that handwriting them would be just as nice, and I'm doing the Ray Dunn font for two of them and just a Hello Spring with two different kind of styles of writing. And for the Ray Dunn, I just kind of try to replicate the skinny font, but I'm sure with the Cricut it would have been a little bit more professional, but I was afraid because it's so small that it would actually tear up the vinyl and not look as nice. And also for the people who don't have a Cricut, it's nice to see that all of these things can be created just with a little bit of patience and a pencil in case you make a mistake. And again, the great thing about all of this is if you make a mistake and you can't erase it, you just paint over it and you start again. So whenever I do freehand write things, I try to start with the middle letter in the middle and then work my way out from each side. That way I can make sure that it's kind of somewhat even on both sides. And I'm writing gather, home, and hello spring. Obviously you can write whatever you'd like. This is just what I chose to write on these. The hello spring will obviously just stay for spring, but like I said, I may use the other side for other seasons. And then once that is done, I go ahead and I attach some florals to these just to give it that spring vibe. Just using one branch of a leftover floral pick for these two, and then for the Hello Spring, I'm just using the tops of flowers. I think they're supposed to be dandelions, whatever these flowers are. Again, from the Dollar Tree, you can pick them up now. They have them. I purchased those flowers now. This other pick I purchased a while back, but they have them again. So here is the finished product. I really like the way it turned out. I can't wait to display them in my tray. For the second DIY, I'm so excited to make these. I picked up 4 of these little clay flower pots from the Dollar Tree. They're $1.25 for 2 of them, or $1 if you're in the States. We're in Canada, so everything is $1.25. And I'm just going to be painting them out in the chalked linen white paint again. As you can see, I use this paint often. I have this big bucket of it and it goes a long way. So I'm only using 3 of them, and like I said, I'm going to be painting them out. I only need to do 1 coat. It covers them pretty nicely. So I'm just curious, does everyone decorate for spring first and then Easter, or do you guys do spring and Easter together? And if so, when do you start with that? When do you end your winter decor and then start with your spring? I'm curious to know. I'm jumping right into spring. Actually, this past weekend, I decorated for spring. I'm going to be decorating for Easter really soon. I just need to finish making my DIYs. There's a few things that I want to make still, and I will be ready for spring and Easter probably maybe the first week of March, I'm assuming. At least for Easter. For spring, I'll be ready now, but for Easter, I'll be ready then. And I'm hoping next year that I can start decorating earlier and maybe start my DIYs a bit earlier so that way they're ready to go when I'm ready to decorate. But anyway, let me know in the comments below when you start your decorating and if you do spring and Easter together or do you separate them. So for this DIY, I did use my Cricut. I used my Cricut to write the words grow, plant, and bloom. And I just used the skinny font for this. I downloaded the font, I believe, from DaFont. So I'm just cutting out the words and then I'm going to be weeding them and just applying the vinyl. This is a permanent black vinyl, so I'm just going to take off what I don't need, use some transfer paper. I always use shelf liner as transfer paper, so I'm going to use my transfer paper and I'm going to stick them on. The vinyl itself has a sticky back, so I don't need to worry about gluing it or anything like that. You can Mod Podge these after just to protect them a little bit more. I'm not going to. They're just going to be sitting on a tray. No one's going to be touching them, so it should be fine. Once I put the words on, I used some dry floral foam from the Dollar Tree again, and I cut little pieces just so I could fit them into the pot. You don't need much. You literally just need a few squares. And this was just so that I could squish the picks into there. And I'm using, it's thistle. I said it was dandelion before because I used the tops of that, but it's thistle. Again from the Dollar Tree, and I'm cutting one branch and I'm using it in all 3 containers, and then I use another branch that I cut and I use it in all 3 containers. And this is just so it goes a longer way. I cut off the length as much as I need to, and I'm using purple and green. And then I decide after that I want a little bit more and I add yellow, but I didn't use all of the yellow and all of the green. And here is the finished product. You'd pay quite a bit more than, the $2, maybe $3 that I spent between the floral picks and the pots, but these are beautiful and I think they'll go beautifully on my tray. It'll be perfect. This next DIY, I'm using another scrap piece of wood. This is just a piece of a 2x4 that was left over that I cut into pieces. I wanted to spell out the word spring, and I apparently thought that, spring only had 5 letters in it, not 6. So I went ahead and I painted everything, and when I was putting the letters on, I realized I was missing a block. I don't know what I was thinking, but I wasn't thinking straight. But then I still had a piece of that wood, so I went back and cut it and painted it out again. But I had a bit of a brain fart, I guess. So after I cut them down, I sanded them down a little bit just to make sure that I didn't have pieces of wood that could get stuck in my fingers. And I painted them out again in that chalked Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint. And I only did 1 coat on these because I am putting a piece of burlap over top of them, so it didn't matter if it wasn't fully 100% white. After they dry, I go ahead and I add the burlap. Now the burlap that I'm using is the burlap ribbon, and I think this is from Dollarama, not from Dollar Tree, but I believe they would probably have this at the Dollar Tree as well. I don't know. Our Dollar Tree is kind of scattered, so sometimes we have things, sometimes we don't, and then I don't ever remember where I buy things, but it was from the dollar store. It's kind of like the ribbon, the burlap ribbon, but the wider one. So I'm cutting it to the amount that I need lengthwise, and then I'm just cutting it down so that it doesn't cover. I don't want it to cover the entire block. I still want some of the white showing, but I want it to pretty much cover the blocks. I measured these blocks to be about 2.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Not, again, when I was cutting them, I put little lines, but if I if the saw slipped or whatever, I wasn't too concerned if they were a little bit different. And same with the burlap. If one was a little bit bigger than the other, it was okay because I wanted it to look kind of rustic anyway. And I find that it's really hard to get things really perfect, especially when you're cutting things like this burlap, just because it frays a little bit and whatnot. So it's okay if they look more rustic. And if you watch any of my videos, that's kind of the style I like anyway. Once I cut them to size, then I go ahead and I apply the burlap. Now you'll see some of the wood is still showing on the parts where I was holding it. I do go back and I paint it, I just didn't show that on the video. I just wanted a spot to hold them, and then once I applied the burlap, then I went back and painted over top of those little spots. And again, just using hot glue, applying it all around the burlap, and then cutting. If it's covering completely, then I cut off as much as I need to, and I add more burlap if I need to. As I said, I will be writing the word spring on here. I've written on burlap before, and I really didn't like the way it turned out, like if I tried to do it with a marker. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to cut felt, and I do have a Cricut, but I have the Cricut Explorer, and I know there's ways you can cut felt, but I didn't have the materials that I needed to cut it or the patience to learn. I guess maybe that's a better way of putting it. I didn't have time to take this to my sister. She's got the maker to have her cut it, so I just freehand drew in bubble letters the spring, and then I cut it out. I thought I could pick up the alphabet at our Dollar Tree just already with vinyl, and they didn't have it, and then I didn't have the stick-on permanent vinyl in white. It hadn't come in. I ordered it from Cricut, but it hadn't come in when I was doing this, so I just used felt and I hot glued it. So again, it just goes to show you that sometimes if you don't have the machines, you can still use things freehand and have them look nice. And so what I did was I measured out how big I wanted the letters, so that way they would be somewhat the same size. So I just went and I put little dots to see where they needed to end, and then a line in the middle so I could make sure that, again, the letters were fairly straight. And then I just cut them out with scissors. I used hot glue to apply the felt to the blocks, and that's all there was to this project. Well, almost, because this is the point where I realized that I was missing a letter because I didn't have a letter for a block for one of the letters. So I thought, well, I must have cut out enough. And I was looking to see if I maybe was drawing it in a different spot, and I didn't see it, but I never made an extra letter. So this is when I went back and cut out another block and painted it again. And then I applied the burlap and the letters to that as well. So here's the finished piece, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I will be displaying it on my fireplace in front of my mirror. This next DIY will also go on my tray. This is really easy. This is a piece of, it's a tube from those bracelets that glow in the dark that you can pick up at the Dollar Tree. And I just saved the tube, and it has a lid on it too, so both ends are closed. And then I use this little piece of wood. It looks like a dowel, but it's actually from one of the sponge brushes from the Dollar Tree that the brush, it was done. So I cut this in half, and I use this as the handles for my rolling pin. I had ripped off well, actually it wasn't even I ripped it off, but it had like the cellophane kind of label, so I just took that off, and it was white underneath, so I didn't need to paint over it. I used hot glue to attach the handles, and then I dry brushed some of that black acrylic paint around it, and then I wrote the word spring on it, and that's all there is to it. Didn't attach the handle properly on one side, so I did wind up having to just re-hot glue it, and I just made sure that the end was nice and clean. I think that was the problem last time. But I reattached the hot glue, or my hot glue wasn't hot enough. I did pick up hot glue at the Dollar Tree this time around before I ordered it from Amazon, but I think this Dollar Tree hot glue is not as good as the Amazon one. So I picked up a lot of them, so I'll have to, once I go through them, I will pay a little bit more for glue so that it works a bit better. And again, I just freehand write the word spring. I'm sorry it's out of frame a little bit. I'm using a Sharpie to write this word in. So that's the finished piece. I think it turned out cute, and it'll make a nice little tray decor. Now you'll notice that I did move it a little bit more to the left side, and that's because my trays are a little bit deeper, so I can kind of prop it up a little bit, but then that way I'm not hiding the word spring on it. So for the very last DIY, I'm using this little frame from the Dollar Tree, and I am taking the word sarcasm off. I was trying to save it, but it's more, I thought it was kind of like a metal piece, but it's more like a just metallic paper. So I just remove it with, I was trying to with an X-Acto knife, but then I wind up using a little scraper to get it off. And it does leave a little bit on there and makes it a little bit rougher, but because I'm going to be distressing it, it's not a problem. So I wind up painting over the inside in that chalked Rust-Oleum chalk linen white paint. I will be distressing this as well with the black, so I'm not too, like I said, I'm not too concerned about covering the little parts where it came off. I just apply more paint there just to get it to be a bit more covered, but it's just giving the illusion of it not being smooth, so I'm okay with that. So my distressing is again using that black acrylic paint and just dry brushing it on. I always try to go in the same direction, but because this had corners, I kind of went into the corners the opposite direction, but it turned out really nice. And I did the same for the frame part around, just added a little bit of black to distress it. It was just kind of too shiny. Now I use my Cricut to put this word spring in. To cut out the word spring, I use skinny font, and then I just found a free flower on Pixabay that I could use for, instead of an eye, I put the flower. And I am just applying this to the frame using my transfer paper. I'm being very careful. I don't know why I didn't cut a big enough piece, but I didn't. So I'm just applying it here. I didn't want the letters to be all the same height, so even when I welded them one up, one down. And then I apply it there, and that's all there is to this last DIY. I really like the way this turned out, and all of these will look so cute either on my tray or on my fireplace in the case of that other spring sign that I made. So here's the final piece. So I'm really happy with how all of them turned out. I don't have a favorite. I really like all of them. Let me know which one you like the best. If I had to choose, it would be between the pots and the 3 house signs, but I really do like all of them. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and stay tuned for my Fridays video where I do some thrift flips again in the theme of spring. Thanks for watching and have a great day.